of the Independent City Council for Monday, December 6, 2021. I'm going to ask John Mayfield to come forward to do our invocation. If you would please stand for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please join me in a word of prayer. Dear Almighty God, we thank you for this day and for the many blessings you've given us, Father. We just thank you for this holiday season. May it touch our hearts and our minds. Bring us joy and peace, Father. We ask for wisdom as decisions are made tonight, Father. We just pray you would guide us and give us your strength. We ask these things in thy name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam City Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Council members Huff,
Here.
Perkins,
Here.
Stewart,
Here.
DeLucy,
Here.
Steinmeier,
Here.
Hobart,
Here.
Mayor Weir.
Here. We did have one citizen who requested to speak to the council tonight. He is a non-resident, so I would entertain a motion to suspend the rules of order to allow for the non-resident to address the council.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Council members Huff,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
DeLucy,
Yes.
Steinmeier,
Yes.
Hobart,
Yes.
Mayor Weir.
Yes. Jerry Winship wishes to speak to the council regarding the Nolan Road ordinance. Mr. Winship.
Appreciate this opportunity this evening. I'm here to support 2151HIR. I'm Jerry Winship, the Executive Director of the Nolan Road Community Improvement District. Karen Downey is our chairman of our 5-member board. Nolan Road Community Improvement District represents over 150 businesses, owners, and investors along Nolan Road from Truman Road to 40 Highway. We have 30 new businesses this year already in 2021. We're excited with the recent announcement of the Cargo Largo, which you all approved here a couple weeks ago, that addition, and we're looking forward to that, plus other things along Nolan Road. Nolan Road Community Improvement has done many different projects here, and they're all for the benefit of the city: beautification, helping businesses, or bringing in new businesses. And the City Council tonight, you have the opportunity to vote on 21-518-IR. I've spent probably 2 years in working on this project. I know of over 20 phone calls, and I've only had one response from them to get to the ownership. This is more of a legal thing on the ownership, and I know Mike Winkler and I working on the intersection there at where Andy's is going to be in Hawaiian. They have private ownership on those two roads. This was done back in the days of Venture, which some of you are not familiar with. So you all can't do anything on the roads right now. We're willing to help advance money if it needs to be done to do the roads, but this is another project on the buildings, and we need to get those cleared out of there so that we can improve what we're trying to do on Nolan Road. We've accomplished a lot of things on Nolan Road, and I think it would be very important if the City Council this evening would affirmatively vote to set in process the legal action necessary to clear the ownership of the property and the new businesses and services offered for the citizens of Independence. I know this will be a long process, but we have to start somewhere, and we really need to get it started, and we need your support on that.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. Are there any other citizens who would like to address the council this evening? This takes us to our consent agenda. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, Mayor Ware, I move to approve the reports and recommendations of the city manager.
Second.
Are there any items any council, thank you. Are there any items any council member wishes pulled for separate consideration?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
can you please pull number 3 from the reports and recommendations?
Any others? Hearing none, please call the roll on the consent agenda minus item number 3.
Councilmember Huff,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
DeLucy,
Yes.
Steinmeier,
Yes.
Hobart,
Yes.
Mayor Weir.
Yes. Councilman Stewart, item number 3.
I was just wanting to see if the city manager could do like a summary of this MOU that with the Fraternal Order of Police.
Yes, I'd be happy to, Councilmember Stewart, and for the rest of the council as well. So if the council will recall, last month, about 30 days ago, the voters here in Independence approved an amendment to Proposition P, which allowed us to expand the use of those funds beyond just using the $750,000 for the animal shelter and the funds to hire an additional 30 officers, but now allowed us to use those funds to help improve the pay for our officers as well. This was part of a larger strategy to deal with our recruitment and retention issues. So the council had previously approved a one-time payment to existing officers of $8,000, as well as recruitment bonuses of $7,000 to non-certified officers and $10,000 to certified officers. This part of the strategy, a three-legged stool, if you will, was to raise the across-the-board wages. So we previously agreed to a contract back in the spring with the Fraternal Order of Police of 3% in year 1 and then 2% in years 2 and 3, 2% respectively each of those years. What this will do now with those additional funds that have been approved by the voters is allow us to adjust those wages by an additional 6%, effective January 1, 2022, an additional 4% on July 1 of 2022, an additional 4% in July 1 of 23. So instead of the 7% total that we were going to increase that by, this adds an additional 14% to that. That will put us 22% above the average of the peer cities that we compared to here in the metro area for our sergeants, and about 9% for police officer positions that we compared to here in the metro. I know it was stated at the Public Safety Sales Tax Oversight Committee when they recommended approval of this item that they also wanted funds left for equipment, and I do want to give credit to the Fraternal Order of Police who brought this proposal to us. This will allocate about 60% of those new funds for wages, 25% for equipment, and leave a reserve of about 15% each year for any one-time expenses that may come up, equipment that needs to be repaired, any of those eligible expenses like that. So I think we have both something that is sustainable financially, good stewardship of those resources, but also being very aggressive in how we're applying those to try to put Independence at the top as far as pay goes and give everybody an incentive to want to come be a police officer in Independence.
Thank you. That's all I have. I'll make a motion for approval of item number 3.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Huff,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
DeLucy,
Yes.
Steinmeier,
Yes.
Hobart,
Yes.
Mayor Weir.
Yes. Item number 3 passes. We have 2 non-ordinance action items this morning. The first non-ordinance action item, the city manager had sent a message to the council earlier today that this item has already been addressed, so we will need a motion to postpone this indefinitely. Mr. City Manager, would you like to explain your request to postpone?
Yes, when this item was brought before the council earlier this year in July, we were asked to postpone it while the new generation study was still completed. However, during that interim period, the PUAB brought some recommendations forward to the council to go ahead and make that repair, and the council approved that resolution. So this item is redundant of the action the council's already taken. Procedurally, we had to put it back on as directed, but we don't need you to take action on it tonight.
Okay, thank you. So I would entertain a motion to postpone item number 1 indefinitely.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Huff,
Yes?
Perkins,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
DeLucy,
Yes.
Steinmeier,
Yes.
Hobart,
Yes.
Mayor Weir.
Yes, motion passes. Madam City Clerk, item number 2.
Council action is requested on the change of ownership application from 11215 Independence LLC for the retail selling of intoxicating liquor of all kinds in the original package license for the Sterling Apple Market located at 11215 East US 24 Highway.
Is there any discussion on this item? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Huff,
Yes?
Perkins,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
DeLucy,
Sorry.
Yes.
Steinmeier,
Yes.
Hobart,
Yes.
Mayor Weir.
Yes, item number 2 passes. Madam City Clerk, second readings.
Bill number 21-081, an ordinance amending section 1.35.003 of the Independent City Code pertaining to structure of the Advisory Board of Health, second and final reading.
Is there any discussion on this item? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Huff,
Yes?
Perkins,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
DeLucy,
Yes.
Steinmeier,
Yes.
Hobart,
Yes.
Mayor Weir.
Yes, ordinance passes.
Bill number 21-515, an ordinance adopting amendments to fiscal year 2020-2021 budget, which was approved by ordinance number 19131. Second and final reading.
Is there any discussion on this bill? Yes, Councilman Huff?
Yes, I was wondering on this, understand we had some glass put in out the arena. I was wondering, I never did see that. I thought it was not until next year. Is that part of this SID here that we're trying to do here, or what's the story on that? I don't ever remember voting on it.
The glass was put in to support the NHL exhibition game that was held earlier in the fall, and that was approved by the Event Center CID Board as one of their expenditures. So it was not an item that came to council, but was the Event Center CID Board.
So is this paying that back?
This is a reconciliation of all of the city's governmental accounts, which is a fancy way of saying all of our different funds in the city. So this, as we close out the fiscal year that ended back on June 30th, we have to make the records and the accounts balance for that. So before we do our annual financial audit, which will get underway here right after the first of the year. So this is just reconciling those accounts to reflect the activities that happened in the previous fiscal year.
Okay, so when they do improvements, or I understand one of the pieces of equipment are bad out there, so they just go buy this without our approval, and then they come back and take it out of a SID. Is that how this all works out?
The SID has their annual budget, just like all the other city funds, and the board is authorized to make those transactions, but we have to report it in our financial documents because cities, local governments are the only ones that can collect revenues. So that's why it's part of, for lack of a better term, Councilman, we're kind of like the bank for the CID. We collect those funds and report those as part of our governmental activities, but it's activities that are actually taking place outside of the City of Independence oversight. It's state, like I said, state government, state law sets up SIDs to where cities have to have them under their umbrella, but then they don't give you the oversight responsibilities for them.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other discussion on this bill? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Huff,
Yes?
Perkins,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
DeLucy,
Yes.
Steinmeier,
Yes.
Hobart,
Yes.
Mayor Weir.
Yes. Ordinance passes. This brings us to our first readings. We do have 3 emergency ordinances this evening, which will require a 2/3 majority vote for passage. Madam City Clerk.
Bill number 21-082, an ordinance approving a rezoning from District O-1 Office Residential to District C2 General Commercial for the south part of 2400 South Lee Summit Road in Independence, Missouri. Bill number 21-083, an ordinance approving a special use permit to operate a body art shop at 2400 South Lee Summit Road, Suite 150 in Independence, Missouri. Bill number 21-084, an ordinance finding, determining, and declaring the necessity of acquiring temporary construction and grading easements and utility easements for the Ralston Stormwater Project, project number 131805, authorizing the negotiation and eminent domain proceedings if necessary, approving the plans and specifications for the project, authorizing the use of experts as needed, authorizing and directing the execution of documents and payments of funds to property owners or other holding property rights in conjunction with the project. Bill number 21-085, an ordinance terminating tax increment financing within the Hartman Heritage Park redevelopment area and authorizing certain actions relating thereto. Bill number 21-086, an ordinance of the City of Independence, Missouri, approving the transfer of real property to the National Park Service.
Madam City Clerk, let me just, I know this is just the first reading. We'll see this in a couple of weeks to vote on it, but Mr. City Manager, this is something we've been working on for quite some time, is to provide a location for a new Truman Visitor Center that is currently located in Fire Station number 1 up on Main Street. So can you just, if you would, I know this is of great interest to many, many people in our community, process and the progress on this new National Park Service facility. So can you just tell us what this step means?
Absolutely. So again, this has kind of proceeded for a while. For those who may not be familiar, the Truman Ticket Office to visit the Truman home is located in Old Fire Station 1 on Main Street at the corner of Main and Truman Road. That space is challenged in a number of ways, needs a lot of physical repairs to the building, has some ADA compliance issues, and doesn't really allow the National Park Service to put on much of a display, and they have a number of very interesting artifacts that were collected from the Truman's home. We have worked closely with the Park Service to try to find a space that was more suitable to them. The way the General Services Administration works, they could have located anywhere within about 4 miles of the Truman home, and we felt like it was very important to try to keep that up near the square, because that obviously drives a lot of business to the small businesses in and around the square area. So after reviewing various sites with the National Park Service, they identified and felt like the space that would be best suited for their needs is the green space or the grass lot immediately to the north of City Hall, located between our transit center and the old My Arts building that the Independent School District is in now. City Council passed a resolution some time ago that expressed the intent to convey the land to construct this new facility, estimated in the range of $8 to $12 million. So really a beautiful facility with a large square footage that would allow more display space, the students to come in, or tourists to visit that before they go to their appointed hour to visit the home. Now we have proceeded to a point where we actually need to make that transaction. So once the second reading is completed on the 20th, and if approved by the council, that will set in motion the conveyance of the land of the Park Service so they could begin construction on this new facility.
Thank you.
Bill number 21-516, an ordinance approving a final plat for Nolan Fashion Square in Independence, Missouri, and declaring an emergency. Bill number 21-516, an ordinance approving a final plat for Nolan Fashion Square in Independence, Missouri, and declaring an emergency. Second and final reading.
Is there any discussion on this bill?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I would just like to remind everyone, we do this simply because it's a plat. And that's why we do it as an emergency. That's all. That's all.
Councilman Huff?
And that's what I was gonna ask. Seeing more and more emergencies on here, just asking why these three are emergencies, but we'll start with that one. I guess that answered that, so, thank you.
Yeah, we typically do final plats as emergencies. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Huff,
Yes?
Perkins,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
DeLucy,
Yes.
Steinmeier,
Yes.
Hobart,
Yes.
Mayor Weir.
Yes, ordinance passes.
Bill number 21-517, an ordinance approving a final plat for Trail Ridge Plaza Replat A in Independence, Missouri, and declaring an emergency. Bill number 21-517, an ordinance approving a final plat for Trail Ridge Plaza Replat A in Independence, Missouri, and declaring an emergency. Second and final reading.
Is there any discussion on this bill? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Huff,
Yes?
Perkins,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
DeLucy,
Yes.
Steinmeier,
Yes.
Hobart,
Yes.
Mayor Weir.
Yes, ordinance passes.
Bill number 21-518, an ordinance declaring the need to acquire real property for the amelioration of conditions which constitute blight in the city by negotiation or, if necessary, by condemnation, and authorizing the city manager to obtain and execute all instruments necessary for acquisition of such land and declaring an emergency.
Before we have a second reading on this, Mr. City Manager, this is the project in which Mr. Winship referred in his comments to the council. Just for the understanding of the council and the community, can you provide some background and anticipated action that might be taken for the development of this project?
Certainly. So as Mr. Winship alluded to, whether you call it Venture or Kmart, arose by any other name, smells as awful in this case.
It's venture.
Oh, thank you. This is a property that's certainly large in space and presents a lot of development challenges as we look to redevelop the Nolan Road corridor, particularly at the I-70 interchange. We have had several developers over the years express varying levels of interest. The challenge has been that the company that holds that property still has a lease that as of today extends for another 3 years. So they're still making money off of that property even though it's not in active service. The Kmart specifically is the building I'm referring to. Most recently, we've had a company that's got a very strong reputation in the certainly Kansas City region and in the Midwest. Sunflower Development Group has expressed an interest in acquiring this property with their own cash and investing in the redevelopment. So bringing that building down and bringing commercial development to that space. The problem that they've had is that they have made repeated efforts to contact the real estate holding company, which is located in Texas, and have not received a response. After failing there, they reached out to our Economic Development Council, who made repeated efforts and did not receive a response. And then reached out to us, and the city made several efforts to get a hold of the real estate company, and they also chose not to respond. So we're stuck in a place where we have a developer who's willing to put money from their own pocket into this project and help with our redevelopment goals and partnering with the CID as well to do that, but they are not being responsive. So really the only tool we had left at this point to require a response is to exercise these eminent domain proceedings. Our conversations with the developer are not for the City of Independence to acquire this property. Again, I mentioned the developer is wholly prepared and interested in acquiring the property, but the city is the only one that's been empowered with the tools of eminent domain. We will continue to try to contact the property owner throughout this process, but this gives us a tool that will, if they choose to continue to be non-responsive, allow us to proceed through legal mechanisms to get a response. But again, if at any point the developer were to walk away, it would be our recommendation that the city also step back on this, because we're obviously not in a position financially to acquire this. We're looking for a developer who's interested in acquiring and redeveloping the site. If we were to hold a very aggressive timeline, each of the steps are outlined in state statute. We're looking at the end of May of next year before this would be completed. So I do want to caution that it will take some time to walk through this, but that also gives us a chance to hopefully make some headway with the developer and allow the property owner, I should say, and allow the developer and the property owner to complete this transaction through traditional real estate means. But if not, this provides a mechanism to get a challenged property in our city in the hands of somebody who's interested in redeveloping the site.
Okay, so when you lay out a minimum of a 6-month timeline, if we were to go all the way through eminent domain proceedings, but at any time during those months or through that process, the property owner could be responsive and either redevelop the property or provide a redevelopment plan or just sell the property outright to whomever.
Correct. So if the council were to approve this item tonight, the very next step is for the city attorney to send a 60-day notice of intent to the real estate company. They have time within that 60 days to respond, to contact us, to let us know what their plans are, intent. So we can't proceed anywhere within the next 60 days after this action is taken tonight, other than giving that initial notification, which, as you just said, Mayor, allows the property owner to decide if they want to convey their intent or to negotiate with this developer I've mentioned. There's lots of options that could play out between now and even the next 60 days.
Okay, thank you.
Bill number 21-518, an ordinance declaring the need to acquire real property for the amelioration of conditions which constitute blight in the city by negotiation or, if necessary, by condemnation, and authorizing the city manager to obtain and execute all instruments necessary for acquisition of such land and declaring an emergency. Second and final reading.
Is there any discussion on this bill?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I had a couple of questions, maybe one more. It says the emergency justification is the health and safety and welfare of the community. So this property's been sitting vacant for, I don't know, more than 5 years, less than 10, but why is it just now an emergency?
We put this property out through our procurement process to get bids for demolition. This property is one of our most frequent calls for service to the police department with regard to homeless activity. Our quotes to demolish the building started at $250,000, which exceeds our annual demo budget for the city. So we didn't feel like proceeding with that was responsible and had backed off. But that is what is really, I would say, emergency in nature is we get a lot of calls for service there for homeless activity. Police department's called for trespassing. The fire department's been called for fires within the building. The water department's been called for water sprinklers that were set off that caused flooding to the building. So it has been a drain on city resources responding to the activity associated with the building.
Okay, and it also says that there's been individual from the city that's tried to contact the ownership?
Correct.
How are we doing that? Are we doing it through phone calls, emails?
Yeah.
Certified letter?
Yes, we had a contact information that was phone, email, and letter, and we tried to contact through all of those mechanisms and received no response.
Have they been issued any citations from the codes department?
No citations associated with that. Other than the building being tagged dangerous.
Okay. So if it wasn't for the developer, would we be even trying to do this?
We would be looking for a solution to get that property addressed, I should say. So our first stab at this, like I mentioned, was the demolition, which was simply too costly. Working with the EDC, we've tried to market the site for redevelopment. I know in my conversations with the executive director of the Nolan Road CID that there's been varying levels of interest, but nobody who's been able to bring forward a completed redevelopment plan. It's just, the property is challenged in a lot of ways for today's modern usage.
Okay. Well, I have a problem with reading as in an emergency. I know we went through this last week. Can I make a motion that we just do one reading? Is that how it works?
It's already received a second reading, so Madam City
So I
Clerk,
can't
how
do
does
it now.
how do we deal with that?
I don't know, I think you can motion to postpone, but I'm not. Give me a second.
At this point, since we're already on the second reading, the only procedurally, I think you'd have to vote no on it,
Okay.
so that to essentially keep it from being approved as second reading, and in which case it would then come back as a second. I have to check on what would happen after that, but at a bare minimum, since we're already on the second reading, it would just be a no vote on approving it.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
So, let me ask the city clerk and the city councilor, is this an answer that we could get in a few minutes if we took a little recess to understand what the procedure would be?
Yeah, we can.
Okay,
Yeah, we can get
so
that.
why don't we take about a 5-minute recess so we understand what a yes or no vote on a second reading would, the consequences of that on the. So we will take about, why don't we say a 10-minute recess? We might come back earlier if necessary, if that doesn't take that long. Meeting back to order. I know Councilman Huff is, I hear him. So we'll go ahead and call the meeting back to order. Mr. City Councilor, would you like to explain what,
Yes.
what you discovered? Thank you.
Sure. After consultation with the city clerk, I'm going to change my response. At this point, if someone wanted to make a motion to postpone the second reading to allow you to gather more information or do any further review, that would be fine. It would simply delay the second reading to the next meeting. If no one does that, or if that motion were to fail, then it would be a vote on the second reading itself.
Okay, very good.
Okay. Sorry for the confusion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying. So, Councilman Stewart, I think we're prepared to make a motion to postpone until December the 20th. Is that correct?
That would be my motion. I'd like to postpone it, or postpone the second reading.
Okay.
Yes, sir. That would be correct. Motion to postpone the second reading.
I'll make a motion to postpone the second reading.
To December 12th?
20th.
Okay, I'll
To
second
December.
that.
Okay. So the motion is postpone the second reading until December 20th.
December 12th.
Is everybody clear on the motion? Is there any discussion on the motion to postpone? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Huff,
Yes?
Perkins,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
DeLucy,
Yes,
Steinmeier,
Yes.
Hobart,
Yes.
Mayor Weir.
Yes, motion passes. That completes our agenda for this evening. We do have some information-only items. I did have a couple of questions, Mr. City Manager, on the information-only items. I just always want to draw attention to our COVID-19 semi-monthly update to make people aware of the existence of COVID-19 in our community. Unfortunately, these numbers don't always come to us in real time, but it gives us a good indication of what the trends are. My question was on the Advisory Board of Health letter in support of pediatric vaccines, which I read, and it was very thorough. I was a little bit confused if there was any action that the Advisory Board of Health was requesting from the council, or any advice that they were giving to the council, or so I just want to be clear that I didn't overlook something in the letter that was asking the council to take any type of an action.
Yeah, our health director staffs that meeting, so I'll ask her to see if there's any additional context to the letter.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Weir, members of the council, my name is Christina Heinen. I'm the Director of Health and Animal Services for the City of Independence. My understanding from the Advisory Board of Health is what they were looking for was essentially to encourage the council to encourage others to be vaccinated as soon as possible, as appropriate for their age and their health conditions. And mostly they just wanted to make it public how much they supported pediatric vaccines, and make it well known that Children's Mercy and other groups throughout our area also very strongly encourage and support pediatric vaccines.
Okay, thank you. Has this letter been, is it available on our city website, so if people in the community want to read it? I know it's attached to the council agenda, but.
That is where it is right now.
Okay.
We can work to make it more accessible.
Okay. If people would like to read it, then I think we should just be preemptive and say, let's just make it, put it on the city website so people can read it if they so choose to see the opinion of the Advisory Board of Health.
I'll work with the public information officer and others to make sure that happens.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay, I appreciate it. This brings us to council member comments. I'll start on my right with Councilman Huff.
Yes. Like on this, I didn't get to speak on this thing with the Kmart venture thing, but I'm the first person that complains about Nolan Fashion Square and that place. I would just like to see some information on why we're not, and there's been a lot of people that work on Nolan Fashion Square. A lot of developers have been out there looking at that too, why we're not pursuing that also. Not that I'm for or against this at this time. I would just like to see a little bit more documentation, code violations, a little history. I realize that's a process, and they always have the chance to come back in and bail that out, or however you want to put it. Just like a little more information on, because that's not the only place we have to deal with. But I'd like to see something like that between now and then. I could, Mr. City Manager.
Yes, sir.
Councilman Perkins.
Thank you, Mayor. Last Friday was a great event, Living Windows, up on the Independence Square. Excellent weather. Talking to the executive director over the weekend, and estimated about 5,000 to 6,000 people that were up here walking around, shopping at the shops, the eateries. Great event. This is becoming a more and more of a highlight of our city, is doing this. So big shout out to them, to all the time and energy and effort that goes into this. This was the first year that City Hall was part of that. So shout out to our conductor here, Zach Walker, who was the conductor for Polar Express. So great event. It was fun. It was good to see a lot of folks out enjoying the time.
Thank you. Councilman Stewart.
Nothing tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Councilmember DeLucci.
I really liked the music at Living Windows. It was beautiful voices and instruments. I just have to say that. Okay, other things I want to tell you. The Vail Mansion is open for Christmas, and it is decorated. It is gorgeous. You should go. Number 2, Bingham Wagner is open for Christmas. I was there just last night. It was gorgeous. You should go. And of course, our National Frontier Trails Museum is open. And unfortunately, the Chicago Alton Depot is not open because we don't have enough volunteers. And that is a wonderful place at Christmas, but I'm sure we're going to get it next year. And in the meantime, I want to say, Mr. Huff, you did good work at the Palmer Center, where we had the senior luncheon. Mr. Hobart, Mr. Huff worked wonders. I stayed out of their way. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilman Steinmeier.
Yes, I just want to say thank you for everyone who reached out to our family. My wife lost her dad the night before Thanksgiving, so we've been just dealing with all of that, and appreciate all the kind well wishes and prayers for my wife. It's been a tough time, so just thank you to everyone who's been just been there and said kind things to us. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Councilman Hobart.
Well, my thunder's been stolen, and I won't steal yours on the mayor's Christmas trees. So I did want to say, I want to give a follow-up on what Mr. Perkins said. Jody Krantz, who works for the EDC, actually started Living Windows, and she here like 5 years ago. She originally started that program down in Jeff City like 30 years ago. So not a lot of people know that she's the one that started that, and I wanted to give her particular props for what a great event. It really is cool to see all the Christmas lights on the square and to see people out milling around. It doesn't happen every night, but it's sure fun when it does. So anyway, we're getting into Christmas. Thank you very much. Mr. Steinmeier, I didn't know about your loss, so certainly condolences.
Okay, thank you. Well, Christmas is not over yet, so we still have lots of ways to celebrate coming up. I was at the Vail Mansion this morning doing an early morning interview on Fox 4, and it is absolutely beautiful. It's just, if you want overload at Christmas, that's where you definitely go. And as Councilmember DeLucci said, our historic sites are open. They're all decked out for the holidays, so please take the opportunity, if you so desire, to go out and take a look and support them. The Truman Library is open 3 days a week. They are selling advance tickets only, so please don't just show up and think you're going to get in. Please buy a ticket in advance and take advantage of that. limited reopening, but reopening nonetheless, so we're very happy about it, as well as the 1859 jail is also open this holiday season as well. Coming up this weekend, the fun's not over yet, we have the holiday market at the Uptown Market on Saturday from 10 to 2. And then we have a special Christmas concert on Sunday afternoon at 4 o'clock at the Truman Memorial Building. And Wednesday, we have the Winter Solstice Walk and the gingerbread houses at the George Owens Nature Park. So still lots of opportunity to go out and enjoy the holidays. A couple other exciting and one kind of sad and but very touching thing. As we all know, we lost Senator Bob Dole yesterday, 98 years old, who was the 2017 recipient of the City of Independence Harry Truman Public Service Award. So we had the great honor of having him here in Independence to receive that award in 2017. And for all those who were able to be present and participate in that, I know it was a memory none of us will ever forget. He's certainly been a great supporter of the Truman Library as well, and has come into the area on numerous occasions for events at the Truman Library. And he was here for the World Series in 2000, I think, 14, when the Royals went to the World Series. I remember seeing him at some of the games. So a great friend, certainly to Kansas City and Independence and his home state of Kansas, and somebody that many of us had the opportunity to get to know and meet, and a true American patriot and statesman. So we greatly missed. Some exciting news. We talked about police recruitment already this evening with our MOU with the police department. We sent a press release today that some of you already may have seen about working with the Metropolitan Community College to utilize that facility for our police academy. We have been using the Kansas City Police Academy, so I'm very pleased, and thank you to Deputy Chief Jarnigan for helping to execute this, that we will be using MCC, which I think we all believe will be a great enhancement to our recruitment, is having people who are right here in the community go through the academy at MCC and hopefully end up here as great servants for our community and our police department when they graduate from the academy. So that's some exciting news as well. And I just want to send my well wishes to Chief Brad Halsey on his retirement. I've known Brad since he was a patrolman and has served our city with dignity and honor through his long career as a police officer in our city, and we look forward to celebrating his retirement. Mr. City Manager, anything else?
Nothing else tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
We are adjourned.